1. A little bit of backstory. I used to run a medium-ish sized 40 rooms hotel a couple of years ago. The hotel was a couple of old neighboring beach apart motels bought by a foreign investor, and then extensively renovated into a single modern boutique hotel. The location was amazing for this type of business. Before the pandemic, it was indeed a prime property. The property manager that ran it at the time had built the hotel with the idea of a place that would be really happy to return to, especially considering that the person who had run the place at first, an ex-girlfriend of the owner, had chased all the old motel guests off, apparently told, and I quote one of the former guests here, "You don't want your kind around here," is what she told people, meaning the older generation, mainly middle-class Americans from the Midwest, spending their family vacations down in Florida every year for decades. Also, backtracking a bit to a point rather important for the story, the owner is not a nice person, nor had he ever worked in or had run the hospitality business. The main line of business is retail, abroad, very much so, and he is a self-absorbed, entitled narcissist with an attitude. He had constantly meddled, making incredibly foolish or downright harmful decisions during the renovation, and then forcing the property manager to carry them out. She was smart and competent enough to usually find a workaround, but sometimes he insisted further. Things weren't smooth, so fast forward to me starting to run the actual hotel part of the business, which at first the owner hadn't meddled in that much. Our main focus was groups at the time, and had been the cruise ship crowd, regular vacation goers, the conferences mainly, and finally, the annual events. Multiple music festivals, holidays, and as well, drumroll, the International Boat Show. The last one being a week-long affair of yacht-building companies selling their boats to rich folks. 10 minutes walk from our hotel. The place I managed was a bit too low-key for the rich crowd. But guess where all those yacht-building companies wanted a room to place all their staff at? We had 40 of them with multiple beds and full kitchens. And we had the place built up with regular guests in mind, including the festival goers and the yachtsmen, especially the yachtsmen. Meaning discounts, free upgrades, personalized approach, regular touch-ups, even occasional barbecue parties. I was on a first-name basis with quite a few boat-building managers as well as boat captains. Because when a boat is sold, they often stay around, get repaired, and the crew has to stay somewhere. And our little place was known in circles as a good place for them. I had made it my goal to make it attractive for the target audiences, and in some of them, everyone knew each other and word got around. I'm a firm believer in the hospitality business being run with the client in mind, not the profit. So we had an amazing year of building up connections and making the place really nice to a few specific circles, and then the pandemic hit. The hotel was almost empty for half a year. Had to furlough most of our staff for a while. Eventually the pandemic was sort of forgotten about, at least in Florida. Cruise ships hadn't come back, but the regular vacation goers had. En masse. We got very busy, very fast. However, the owner wasn't thrilled with me hiring a new front desk receptionist. Why bother if I myself could do this job as well, right? Make housekeepers, we had 2 of them total for the entire place, do laundry as well. Get the property manager to do accounting too. At the same time, the owner had bought a yacht just because, and attempted to make our property manager run the boat as well. So, after a few more months of struggle, she had finally had enough and had quit. Good for her. We're still friends, even today. The owner replaced the property manager with his daughter. Like father, like daughter, exactly same type. However, in their country, manager is manager. They don't get the difference between a property manager, does the building or property side of things, and a business manager, does the business in that building. She immediately decided that her job was to run the hotel, and my job was to do what I'm told. And the first thing they do, the father and daughter, is look at the boat show just 1 month ahead, as well as the festive season a couple of months later. they had a brilliant idea of making more money. After all, why had we sold all the rooms that cheap? Triple rates for the boat show? We could easily make twice as much, right? And why offer free parking when no one around does that? Not like it's a selling point, right? So they tell me to change the room rates on existing reservations and start charging for the parking. On reservations that were made with free parking listed, and above all, charge more for the boat show. On the rooms that had been sold a year ago, mostly face-to-face when people were checking out after the last show, and it was apparently up to me to call them and let them know that we had raised the rates by 50%. Oh, and that the parking for the show is now $100 a day per vehicle. I was not happy with the idea, to say the least. For whatever reason, I had assumed that this is not how things are done in the US. Even down in Florida, despite the infamous Florida man. Nor I felt comfortable telling people, most of whom I knew, and tell them this banger of an idea. So I had fought against this decision as hard as I could. I came up with various reasons as to why we should not do it, pointed out how we run the place, argued the point of the reputation. The owner hadn't listened, but said, "I hear you, but trust my business acumen. After I made millions." The daughter had listened to me very carefully. Her reply, "Your direct superior has decided and given your instructions. It's not your place to think and question things. Just call them all and explain everything. That's your job." So, a bit of malicious compliance then. I called our guests, and not just the boat people, I called most of the regulars of ours. Took a while. And I explained what was happening. I told them the truth. How things are run now, what new ideas are there, etc. I also told them that I was very much against these new decisions, and that I probably won't be there for long. Most of them thanked me for the information and said they will be in touch. A few local yachtsmen asked if they could come in to discuss things. In the end, the boat people were forced to pay extra. It's impossible to find a good property at any price range close to the boat show location just a month before the show itself. The local ones who came in and met with the owner and his daughter got a great deal on free parking after a price adjustment. I struggled to keep a professional face. However, when I met them on my own after their talk with the owner, or when I talked with the other regulars over the phone, almost all of them thanked me for my efforts and told me they will not be back. Neither would anyone they know. Also, if I would go to a new place, would I please let them know so they could go there too? Well, that very week I gave the owner's daughter my notice. Left just before the show began, letting her be the one dealing with the shitstorm, since she insisted on being the boss so much. From what I hear, she hadn't managed it all. Right now the place is run by a shady management company that just don't care, with the daughter supposedly running the front desk. No one is answering any calls or checking emails. Reviews plummeted. They hadn't even renewed their licenses or paid Booking.com or Expedia fees. Who are threatening legal action now. And apparently, the owner and his daughter blame me and the property manager for everything, since it's our leaving that screwed them over. Whatever. 2. I live in a small town and started working as a night auditor in a hotel a few months back. I rarely ever interact with the other employees, let alone the guests. I enjoy it. Lots of time to read and putz around on Reddit. Recently, due to several wildfires and the mandatory evacuations they created, we've had an influx of long-stay guests who've lost their homes. We also have several fire crews in-house, which has been fun. No sarcasm there, they're great. The issue, however, is this. The other night auditor brings her dog to work. It is not a service animal. While the hotel is pet-friendly, she has been asked to stop bringing her pet in with her. She has ignored these requests. Recently, we've been getting complaints. Her dog has chased people through the building, attempted to bite guests, attack children, and fight other dogs. In response to these complaints, she started locking her dog in the guest dining area or kitchen. Her dog has been pooping in the kitchen, which is an issue. When our bosses finally put the boot down and told her no more pets, she wrote a 4-page memo about the issue. Short version, she admitted that her dog had done everything stated above, but the reason people were complaining was because of a satanic reptilian Illuminati plot against her and her pet. I wish I was kidding. Here is the memo, in all its glory. I've redacted identifying names, including the dog's name. Communication Post, September 8th, 2022. At this time, it would be best practice to leave all employee pets at home due to several complaints and concerns from guests. While we understand that we know and love the pets of staff members, we cannot possibly tolerate pets being aggressive to guests. September 16th, 2022. Dear hotel staff, this letter is in response to the comment above, which was posted in the communication log on September 8th, 2022. If you have any comments, please feel free to post them at the bottom of this letter. A bit of background about Woofers, my canine companion. She is 1 year old and has been with me at this hotel since she was 8 weeks old. Together, she and I are the night auditors. It's worked out well because she stays awake with me during the shift, and we both sleep during the day. She likes all of the front desk staff and gets excited when it's time to come to work so she can greet them and begin her shift. So far, she likes Sally and Thomas the best, because they have made her feel welcome and they are kind to her. Many of the guests also like her because she has received many positive compliments from them. She has gone through various stages of development and growth, and she presently is at the stage of finding her voice and honing her socialization skills in a public setting. She and I eat a plant-based diet to teach her nonviolence and harmlessness. Her food is scientifically fortified, which I have to purchase online from a specialty company, in order to take all of her necessary nutrients to keep her strong and healthy in body, mind, and spirit. I take her training seriously, and the ultimate goal is for her to be peaceful, calm, socialized, and comfortable with all. So far, she sees the hotel as her house, and is presently working on understanding that it is okay that other people besides staff members may come and go through the front door. She barks to announce the arrival of people she doesn't know, and therefore I keep her gated behind the desk when guests are circulating about. She does not bark behind the desk. In time, I feel she will relax more and more. When everyone has gone to sleep and it's quiet in the hotel, I allow her to play with her toys in the lobby area, and she likes to follow me into the laundry room, etc., while I go about my cleaning duties. Her socialization training is something we diligently work on, and there is still room for improvement in this area. The other night, Sally informed me that 2 guests approached her on September 8th and yelled at her about woofers. Apparently, the guests stated that woofers barked at them. It is possible that woofers barked at them, as stated. However, I can't recall who this is or verify this, because neither of these people approached me about this issue, or came to the desk to speak with me directly. I apologize again, Sally, for this, as I know it doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of a complaint when someone unloads on us. It was also brought to my attention from a different staff member that the man named Rudiger, who stayed with us on August 31st, complained to the front desk that woofers barked at him and chased him down the hall. This I can verify to be true. It was after hours, quiet in the hotel, and she was following me around while I cleaned. Mr. Rudiger unexpectedly walked down the hall and it startled her. But she also chased after him as he walked away and expressed her disapproval of him. I redirected her immediately and apologized on her behalf. A bit later, the lobby and the hotel were quiet again. No one was around, and so I allowed her to play with her toys in the lobby area. It goes without saying that the lobby is a public area, and guests should always feel comfortable coming and going as they like, but Mr. Rudiger was making his presence known deliberately to rouse woofers, and walked through the lobby several times in the wee hours of the morning to smoke cigarettes in front of the building. I finally realized that he was doing this purposely to harass her, and I put her in the other room with the door shut. his response was to drop an F-bomb at her. And the following morning, he reported the incident to the front desk and was rewarded a free night on the hotel due to his complaint. Adding here that Mr. Rudiger was charged a cleaning fee due to housekeeping finding towels and sheets soiled with feces, and everything had to be thrown away. He is a troubled man, and while we can hold compassion for him, I don't recommend he is allowed back at the hotel. As stated above, there is room for improvement with Woofer's socialization skills, which she and I are dedicated towards making her a success. It is important that she behaves properly and like a nice young lady while she is here. She is a loving, funny, and loyal little being, and it is a blessing that she is here on planet Earth. She has helped me tolerate the grave shift hours too, with her excellent company and companionship she provides. I'm now going to explain something that may seem strange, but it is necessary to add this because it is the truth, and it relates to what happens with the complaints against woofers. Some of you are already aware that my second job is lightworking. I'm a lightworker for Planetary Ascension. Recently, I completed some work to shine light upon the reptilian negative alien races who are present on this Earth plane, and who are behind child trafficking. The reptilians have demonstrated vicious predatory behaviors, and they are very dangerous towards humans and animals. This information about their presence has been kept from the mainstream society, and the controlled media spins half-truths and lies about what is truly happening on planet Earth. However, things are heating up planet-wide, and a full disclosure event will be taking place in the near future. Other things that these invading reptilian races are involved with include human abduction, forced breeding programs, forced experimentation, and hybridization of human DNA, satanic ritual abuse, adrenochrome harvesting, pedophilia, and the COVID pandemic chemtrails, the 9/11 terrorist tragedy, and unaccountable other crimes against humanity. I have studied these negative alien races since 2015, and I am acutely familiar with their retaliatory attacks against those of us who stand up for the light and shine light upon their darkness. The recent complaint against woofers was a deliberate and planned attack against me. The reptilians targeted woofers and used the situation to get back at me, to retaliate because of my recent work in calling out their child trafficking crimes to the Texas court-appointed special advocate. My contact to the CASA was on the same day, August 31st, that Mr. Rudiger made his appearance, and the other two complaints came afterwards, for 3 in a row. Noting also that the reptilians are ridding this post as they're able to track, spy, and interfere via advanced technology through television, computers, cell phones, and other devices. Therefore, I'm letting them know that God is my witness. I will assist in standing up for those who have no voice, such as those who suffer with child trafficking, SRA, etc. To recap, under normal circumstances, and especially at a hotel which allows dogs, if a dog barks at someone, normally the person would shrug it off, as long as it doesn't continue, which it didn't. I redirect woofers each time and lovingly encourage her to be peaceful and calm. She also has never nipped at anyone. Her barking is instinctive, and with time it will ease up, and I feel confident that she will be more at ease as she gets through this growth stage. Although Woofers is absolutely heartbroken that I have left her at home, I'm keeping her at home for a few weeks to work more intensely on her training and plan on using a vibrating bark collar to better get her attention. Her time away from the hotel will allow the tension from the dark forces to settle too. When I feel she has improved her barking and listening skills, I plan on bringing her back to work with me. Thanks for listening and for keeping an open mind and open heart. The interim manager was at corp retreat until Wednesday. My co-worker and interim manager had a meeting. A little later, corporate replied to my email, thanking me for letting them know, but informing me that our interim manager would handle it. They have decided that my co-worker's dog may return to work with her. Quote, once dog is trained. No mention of the dog shitting in the dining or kitchen area, no comment on the dog being off-leash, attempting to bite kids, nothing. No one seems the least bit concerned about the insane lizard people rent. Due to this, and increasingly lazy and incompetent management, I've begun looking for another part-time job. I don't get paid enough to deal with any of this. Stay safe out there. 3. This is 3 separate occasions, but all in the same month within a couple of weeks of each other. It happened a few years ago during September. Incident 1. I came to work one night to do the night audit, and there was a middle-aged Asian man in the parking lot just standing around like he was waiting, which I found out he was. So I went inside, and me and my coworker did the usual thing and switched shifts, and I asked her about the man outside. She responded that he was waiting there for a while, and possibly for a ride. So she clocked out and gathered her stuff and left. A few minutes after she left, the man came in, and I noticed that the way he was walking was a little bit drunk. He asked where the girl went, and when I asked who, he said my coworker. I told him her shift ended and she went home. He went on a tirade, saying that she told him to meet her here for sex and drinks. He said he met her in a bar and paid her $400, and she told him to meet her here. And I asked him, "What are you talking about? She's been here all day working." He pulled out his cell phone and showed me some sort of off-brand dating app or website, and the girl in the picture had a very passing resemblance to my coworker. A 30-something Mexican lady with longish dark hair. Apparently, he had met her at a local bar and paid her $400, and she told him to meet her there, and assumed in his drunken state my coworker was that girl. When I tried to explain to him that he probably got scammed, he accused me of being in on it, and I was her pimp. He threatened to call the police, and I told him, "Sure, call the police, but get out of my lobby, you're not welcome here." He actually called them. The police came and got both of our stories, and of course they sided with me, and they told the man just to go home. You got scammed. So to that guy, I was a pimp that stole his money. Incident 2. My coworker, the aforementioned Mexican lady's grandmother, likes to make Christmas decorations. In this case, she took 2 booze bottles, filled them with crystals and Christmas lights, and made some very nice decorations with them. My coworker gave 2 of them to me for Christmas. Now, admittedly, this is partly my fault. I placed them on a back table behind the front desk, and I didn't forget them, but they were in sight of the guests if they stood at the corner of the front desk. But later that night, I checked in a guest who for some reason thought he didn't need an ID to check in, and I had to explain to him, without an ID I cannot check you in, and he reluctantly gave it to me. Well, the next morning when he checked out, he complained to my coworker, the same lady, that I was drunk and drinking on the job, that my breath smelled like liquor, and he could see the booze on the shelf. Which, of course, none of that was true except for the decorations on the shelf behind me. My coworker corrected them, saying that I do not drink, which I don't, and if I did, I wouldn't on the job, which is also true, and that those bottles were decorations her grandmother made for Christmas. Well, of course, he said he didn't believe her and will be calling corporate. He never did. Now I'm a drunken pimp. Incident 3. This was about a week later, around 2 in the morning. I got a call from a guest on our smoking floor. The top floor of the hotel was where all the smoking rooms were. He said there was a very strong smell of weed coming from the room next to him, and he requested I call the police because it was very heavy. And he responded if I did not, he would. So, by the guest's request, I called the police and they came and knocked on the man's door. But because he never answered, they left shortly afterwards. The next day, however, the smoker came down and talked to my coworker, who I explained the situation to. And she told them I wouldn't care if anybody smoked. Which I kind of do because I dislike it, but I don't begrudge those who do it. He ended up asking her if I was some kind of snitch, and she defended me by saying anybody could have called the cops if they smelled that stuff. So I guess for that month I was a drunken pimping snitch. 4. I worked at a hotel for a little over 6 years. Started as construction was ending and left a couple months after our 5th manager started. Boy, do I have some stories. So we had a busy week planned right in the middle of summer, and in between two major national parks that bring in many Canadians, and frankly people from all over the world. We had a contract with a Canadian bus tour company that brought in a lot of older guests to stay on the way down to their destination. They wouldn't check in until about 8 p.m. at the earliest, and we set up their wake-up calls for 5:30 a.m. per the tour manager, so they just wanted to come in, eat, and go to sleep. Understandable, but especially getting old. So a day before the bus tour came to check in, we had a gentleman come in and want to pay cash. Paying cash is a pain because we require a $200 deposit for incidentals, and people always argued and said they wouldn't do anything to damage the room and blah blah blah. Well, this man didn't even blink an eye, which was even more strange as he was paying cash for a week, and $200 on top of it, but great. Super easy check-in. He was nice but looked strange. He was about 10 years older than me, so early 30s, and was dressed nice but old style, like he got his suit from Goodwill. I checked him into a top-floor room, only 3 floors in the building, and I didn't see him the rest of the night. The next day, I showed up at my afternoon shift ready to handle the bus tour arriving that evening. My coworker G was covering the desk for the morning shift because someone called off. He said he was going to stay later and then told me how he started this morning. The maintenance guy was late, so he had the night auditor stay late so he could check the pool. When arriving at the doors, he sees a stark naked man wiping the windows. That's not the maintenance man. So, even though he wanted to walk away and pretend he didn't see anything, he goes in and asks, Sir, can I ask what you're doing in here?
I'm waiting for the sunset and noticed the windows were dirty.
Thank you so much for the help. We do appreciate it. But I would really appreciate you grabbing a towel to head up to your room and get dressed, as we have small children here, and you should just always be clothed in a public area.
Good point. I'm sorry, it won't happen again, sir.
And he left. G didn't see him again, but said to keep an eye on him. The day was quiet. He came down a couple times and sat in the breakfast room drinking coffee, fully clothed, and the maintenance guy said he set up a table in the pool and was just hanging out there. We let him stay because most of our rooms were going to be filled with the tour bus and no one was in the pool. The night audit came in shortly after the check-ins and I went home. The next day I had to come in the morning, so 8 hours off and going to see all the same groups from the night before. I am a people pleaser though, so I just smile through all the pain. But when I pull up, a fire truck is outside. Oh great, this looks fun, I think to myself. I walk in and every single guest in our hotel is in our tiny lobby and breakfast room and no one looks happy. I practically ran to the back office to see what was going on. G was at the desk dealing with everyone and the night auditor was in the back getting ready to leave. So apparently at about 4 a.m., our formerly naked guest decided it was a great time to pull the fire alarm and woke everyone up. He then starts telling people around him on the 3rd floor he's just trying to get a hold of his lawyer, and started passing out $100 bills for the inconvenience. He made his way to the front desk and jumped behind it, where our night auditor was, and gave her a $100 bill, then announced all the guests that he did it and just needed to talk to his lawyer. The guests were pissed. The night auditor didn't know what to do, so called G and he said lock him in his office until he got there. In the meantime, she had to deal with the fire department and the guests, and when G got there at 5:30 he was gone. Right when G was heading up the stairs to his room, the fire alarm started going off again. G opened the door to the 3rd floor, and there he was just standing by the fire alarm. G had him come with him to his office as everyone was coming out of their rooms again, and locked him in his office, and had the night auditor keep watch while we talked with all the unhappy guests. So by the time I got there, all the tour guests were about to leave after 2 rounds of fire alarms, and not nearly as much sleep as they wanted. It was chaos trying to get them not to pitch forks and get the guy who caused this. Even if some of the guests did get money, they still weren't happy. Understandable. Somehow G didn't kick him out and told him he needed to stay in his room the rest of his 5-day stay. Don't come out. Call your lawyer if you need to talk to him, and call the front desk if you need anything. but don't leave the room. So I'm working the afternoon shift the next day, and a guest comes running in and says there's a naked man touching himself in front of the window. G was there, so he runs up to our troublesome guest's room, who was fully clothed, and didn't know what he was talking about. That was BS. He did do that, but was playing some mind game with G, and G was letting him. Now, when fully clothed, you did notice he had kind eyes. They were red, like he doesn't sleep a lot, obviously, but he was pleasant to talk to and had great manners, tipped housekeeping for bringing items to him, and thanked us for everything. But we were all still weary because obviously this guy is crazy, and you never know when they will snap. We actually ended up Googling him and found he owned a house in another state and sold it to move here and be a teacher. He was a substitute teacher for an elementary school and had a bunch of degrees from college, so I guess you could say G felt bad for him. He saw a human that had everything, and then nothing, and wasn't even halfway through his life, so G wanted to help. G was always there for everyone when in need. He was a great guy and co-worker until he got general manager and hired his kids and friends. Story for another day. So by this time it's Monday, the third day of our naked friend's stay, and the first day my GM came in. She was lazy and had G take care of everything all the time and would only work the bare minimum. They called the naked man and asked him to come into her office and talk with him. He brought down a tray about an hour before the meeting and asked that we give it to G just like it is. Don't touch anything, just give him this. It was a tray with a railroad tie, a couple of pens, several key cards of ours, and a piece of paper that read, me. When I grabbed it, the key cards fell a little from their stack and I tried to stop it, and the man said not to touch it, just set it down and have G come get it. Fucking weird, but G took it. Still don't know the significance of the items, but he asked for them back after the meeting. Somehow he convinced G and the GM that he would be respectable the rest of the time. I'm not sure what was said in the meetings that occurred for the next 2 days, but there were several of them at this man's request. In the pool, the breakfast room, his room, outside, and another in GM's office, all with this strange setup that couldn't be touched. He would add to it each time and got G coffee one of the times. G didn't drink it, thank God. The night before we had to kick him out, he went to G. Poor thing was covering night audit, and he asked G if bear shit in the woods and went to his room for the rest of the night. G just didn't get it, but then thought how public restrooms have a koala bear care solution to change babies. He went in and found a half-ripped piece of paper with a note. It was all nonsense to us, but then later found the other half, and it made up like 3 different letters, but all of them were random words, and some were not legible. The next day, G spoke with him, and said he didn't feel safe with him, and it was best he leave. We checked his room, gave him his deposit back, and said he was on his way to meeting Spielberg or some big director to write up his story and tell it to the world. We never heard from him again. I occasionally Google his name, but haven't found anything yet. 5. I have worked for a nice hotel for a few years. I currently work as the night auditor and wanted to share some of my stories I've had over the years. Some of them are from when I worked a different shift to now. Best to her at the end. A guest can't count. We have a 3-story hotel. It's located at the end of a street with 3 other hotels. All of them are 3 stories. One day a guest arrives and I start checking him in. I get through my whole speech and hand him his room keys. He takes a look at the room number, 300-something, and asks what floor he's on. I let him know he will be on the 3rd floor. He asks for a higher floor. I let him know that the 3rd floor is the top floor. The guest immediately gets angry.
I've been coming to this hotel for years and I stay on the 4th floor every time.
I stand there for a moment trying to figure out if he's messing with me. I'm sorry, sir. We only have 3 floors.
Don't lie to me, I come here all the time.
It had only been once, our computers tell us.
And I was upgraded for free to the 4th floor.
At this point, he just doesn't want to be wrong. Sorry, sir, but you can go outside and look at the floors of the building. The guy huffed and puffed and ended up taking his room, but as per every customer like this, threatened to speak to my manager about not getting his free 4th floor upgrade. Old man buys wood. An elderly couple checked in and went up to the room. A while later, they come back and ask for a different room. When I inquire why, they said the bed was too soft. I informed him all of the beds are the same. He lets me know they need a firmer bed for his wife. I ask if they would like to be transferred to our other hotel across the street. Maybe they have firmer beds. The man declines and tells me he will solve it. About an hour later, he walks in with a bed-sized piece of lumber and takes it up to his room. The housekeepers informed us that they were using that on top of the bed to sleep on. We just ended up throwing the lumber away after they left.
Super thief.
Right before COVID, we had a guy come stay with us, declaring he was staying with Walmart. Nothing fishy about that, we have Walmart staff staying with us quite a bit. What was fishy was that he was paying us with a refillable debit card. We didn't know for a while that's what the card was, probably a month. After we stopped getting the money from the card, we informed the guest. He said he had to talk to his boss and would refill it later. This goes on for a couple of days, same story from him. We had 0 problems with him thus far, so we gave him the benefit of the doubt. A couple more days go by, no money. Now we're getting worried. The guest was in his mid-20s and started having guests over from a very large age range, indicating he was a prostitute. Usually older men, and a few times some very young kids, probably 17-ish. The guest starts declining housekeeping and is now eating breakfast in his room. Usually not weird, but red flags started popping up in our heads. Manager tells us to keep an eye on him. Make sure I charge him every day, and if this keeps happening, to call the cops. By the end of that week, nobody has been in his room. We tell the guide if he can't pay, he will have to leave. If he won't leave, we will have to call the cops. The guest says he will have the money by tomorrow, no problem. The next day, we don't see him for breakfast, which is unusual. So I had to go check on him to make sure he had the money. No response. Check back a while later, no response. Call the room, no response. My manager tells me to go into the room to do a welfare check. This guy had stolen everything that wasn't bolted down, minus the mattress, dishes, silverware, desk chair, TV connection device, towels, bedding, everything. His room was on the 3rd floor, but with the positioning of his room, you could walk out and immediately be in the front staircase. 2 flights down and he's out the side door, and that one has a camera watching it. On top of stealing everything, he had smeared his feces all over the bathroom as a departure gift. He fled, and to my knowledge, we never got him. FBI Supreme Court Justice and the owner of the hotel. We had a guest checked in with us for weeks. I had not had any interaction with this guest other than seeing him in the mornings. He would come down, get coffee, and go back to his room every day for weeks. One day, the guest, Bill, gets in the elevator with a woman. The woman goes to push the elevator button, and Bill says that if she touches the button, he will cut her head off. Well, that's a call to the police. He took off, leaving a chunk of his stuff at our hotel. Unknown to us, this guy had gone to another hotel in our vicinity after we called the cops, and before we could send out warnings. So he stayed at his sister property for a couple of days, till that staff figured out who Bill was. The cops come and pick him up, and he's gone for about a week. As a side note, I'm not sure how he was paying for his room. He had to have some kind of working card that was pulling money off of it, or we would have known quick. A week passes. I get a call from our sister property telling me that Bill was just over there and might be heading to our hotel. As I get off the phone, he walks out of the breakfast room, which faces the front desk, and I stop him. "Bill, you know you can't be here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave."
Excuse me, I am the owner of this hotel. I can stay here whenever I want. I also work for the FBI, and I will shut this down.
I'm ushering him towards the door, nodding my head. He continues to spout stuff like,
I'm a Supreme Court justice, and I'm going to sue you.
Besides the crazy shouting, he's leaving. I call the cops and tell them to come get this guy, 'cause he's nuts. Cops show up 10 minutes later, search the surrounding area. Can't find him. After cops leave, I get a call. Pick it up and realize I'm talking to Bill. Bill starts giving me a rundown of his constitutional rights, and that I have infringed upon them. He says he's going to fuck me up when he sees me next. I hang up the phone, ignoring the crazy. I go to our kitchen area to tell our breakfast person what just happened. Another longtime guest was there, so I was telling them both this story. The guest describes the guy and just said,
I just saw him enter the side entrance a few minutes ago when I took my stuff to my car. It's that bad?
I start panicking and get another call. My phone says, emergency phone, which is one of the phones by any of the elevators. It's Bill.
Do you know who I am?
I'm going to... Click. I hang up and call the police again. Get over here, this guy's in the building and he's threatening me. This time the cops bring a few people and they sweep the hotel. There's not a lot of places he can hide. They do not find him. The cops inform me they know who Bill is and they are trying to catch him. The reason? He had been walking around the area lately, calling 911 dispatchers and harassing them. The police said they couldn't get an exact location because he kept moving and calling. The cops gave up looking for him and left. I was shocked. My shift was ending so I could leave. Everyone was informed, so I left. Nothing happens for a few days. We don't hear from him. We don't see him, nothing. A couple of days later, my boss forwards us the booking screenshot of Bill. They had finally picked him up. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Coahw, episode 96. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do share it around and boop the like button and possibly eat some cake. Because cake's always good to have. Right, let's see. We are... I don't know what day this is, my head's numb. I don't think we have any special birthday shoutouts today, though. Don't recall. I think that was all for September. Next ones are early October. So let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... And this one is supplied by my moderator Ashley, also known as Potato Puff, sometimes Hufflepuff. What is one thing that when you're old and grey, assuming we're all lucky enough to make it there, that you think kids, grandkids, neighborhood kids, whatever, will ask you about the before times? Like,
gather round, kids. Old Grandpa Hellfreezer's gonna tell you about twerking.
I don't know why old man Hellfreezer has that voice, but let's just go with it. Or maybe something more serious, maybe something funny, something serious. Pearls of wisdom you'd like to pass on to the next generation. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.